manage your application example. I hope we can demonstrate that it's quite simple to kind of code with server-side PR and Vaadin code. Let's go back to the presentation. So to summarize, we have 2 Java classes, maybe around 50 lines of code. We didn't do any HTML, we didn't do any CSS, we didn't do any JavaScript, we didn't do any cut and paste, and still it's quite fast and responsive. There was just one web page, and all of the rest was agents automatically. It runs in any web browser. So let's speak about Vaadin framework. What is and how it works under the hood. So basically, our goals in Vaadin framework are 3. First, developer experience. This means minimizing the amount of code you have to write, kind of making you as fast in building applications as possible. The second goal is user experience. As rich and nice user experience for the end user as possible. And the third goal is scalability, make it perform well. And these goals are in this order. So if we have to sacrifice something in order to make the developer experience better, then we sacrifice it. If we have to sacrifice scalability somehow in order to make user experience better, then we sacrifice it. But we still try to reach these 3 goals and just put them in order. This is actually a bit different than Google Web Toolkit. Google Web Toolkit, I think the first goal is scalability. It tries to kind of minimize the amount of servers you need to create Gmail in your application. And I think it's not a reasonable goal, but it's not our goal. Our goal is developer experience. And what is built basically on top of 3 different ideas. And to demonstrate this here, let's discuss them one by one. First, components. Everything is a component in Vaadin, and we try to ship it with as nice components as possible. There are 3 kinds of components. User interface components, data source components, and theme components. So, first, user interface. Actually, I should show this slide. There is a demo called sampling in Vaadin that kind of shows you different UI components in Vaadin in the kind of core package. So you can go through those components and see that they have icons and tooltips and buttons and links and what have you. For each component, you have links to API, you have description, you can see the source code for the example and so forth. Let's see something more useful. So you can of course embed anything like Flash or web content or everything is keyboard control. You can hook into any keyboard shortcut that you want to build in your application. There are different date fields for certain dates. So you can just select the date and show it on screen. All of typical components, because a lot of business applications have been built with this, all the components that you would expect are to be used in widely different applications are probably there. You can easily kind of combine those components to make a bit more interactive experience. For example, this is just a text field, and when I write something here, it shows text that maps below. And this is a different component below, so you can kind of combine those for building new components. So text areas, rich text areas. There are different kinds of select components, all the typical ones you expect. You could have like some of these have icons also. So you can have icons and different things in combo boxes. Sliders, different uploads, uploading multiple files at a time. If the browser supports, you can drag and drop files in there. Business applications are mostly about forms, so we have Google Forms, validation built in. data grids, you already saw a lot of data grids. There are tons of features of data grids. There are trees. You could also have trees and tables. Everything supports drag and drop, so you could like drag and drop items between trees and tables. You can handle the drag and drop validation activities on the server side or on the client side. Both are supported. Layouts are probably interesting. So we had a different kind of layouts in the basic package. And there are basically three different kinds of layouts. One is like building the layouts by hand, coding them as we did, by combining all kind of vertical layouts and horizontal layouts and grid layouts and option layouts that we're using. So you could use those by hand. Or you could use that editor like drawing the layouts using these same layout components. Or you could use custom layout. This means HTML templates for layouting. So this part here is built with an HTML template, and it's just normal. This is the template file here. So if you look at the source code, it's just normal HTML with special location attributes. So you could ask your visual designer, your design team to draw a layout in viewer and mark the places for your components with location attributes. And there is also CSS layouts, so you could use CSS for layouting. So in this case, you are building the layout with CSS file, defining how things relate to each other. Oops, that is not closed. Sorry about that. I was using CSS layout. So here you can show that when you are kind of drawing the layout, you need to flow these things around, just as defined in your CSS. Different panels, tab sheets, accordions, menus. So you could have like multiple level menus. Let's see. Pop-up view is a really nice component, really simple one. So you could add like small pop-ups in your application in such a way that those pop-ups could actually contain any kind of other components. So you could put those really nicely inside of your user interface. Right? Different notification mechanisms, so you could show notifications on screen in a, let's see, different kind of manner. This is a screen notification, lower part of the screen. So these are the components that are built into the core framework. Actually, there is also a package with mobile stuff. Yes. I can get back to that. They are not in the core framework, they are outside of it. They're a really large directory of add-on components. So, there are also touch-enabled components that you can use to build like iOS type of applications, both for iOS and Android. So these actually work quite similar to actual native applications, but this is still fully programmed in Java on the server side, or with Scala if you prefer Scala. You are not coding anything directly for the iPhone, so this is just a web page, and all the kind of transitions here are hardware accelerated. If you're running the same application on an iPad, you get a different layout, and you can have a bit different kind of experience for the same application. But these are just Vaadin components. Okay, themes. Vaadin comes built in with three different themes. First of all, Rainier. Rainier is a kind of business type of theme that we were using to build our document manager application. A bit boring, but really good for banks and industries that want to show a lot of data. Runo theme is a bit expressive and more kind of young or trendy theme, so you can build a bit more round things and a bit more kind of nicer looking things with it. This comes also in the core product. And then there's a chameleon theme. This is quite fun. It actually is based on the idea that you are building custom themes, but you don't want to do everything by yourself. So you can use chameleon as a starting point. That's, for example, this page. And then you can pick colors for it. You want to have it red, and we want to have the base color to be something else. And we can kind of build colors for the theme, and then you can download the theme from here and start customizing it in CSS. And if you want to go to fully custom themes, you can build like really customized look and feel for your application. For example, here this is iTunes built out of iTunes clone built out of Vaadin standard components. This is something like 200 to 300 lines of Java code, so you can see the plain like use a song here. But you can just change the look and feel of the standard component with CSS quite much. Okay, and the third thing is data source components. So Vaadin data source is such. This is the whole model. Basically, you have three things: property, item, and container. We were using all of these in our demo application. Property is basically one object that you can set and get. Item is a set of those. So if I am an item, then I have full properties like name and age and so forth. And then there's a container, is a set of those items. So if I am an item, then we are in a container, this room, and we might share some properties like name and age. But it might be that some of us have different properties than the other persons here. And that's it. All the UI components follow these interfaces, and then you can bind your data to these interfaces. Inside the interfaces are some extensions in order to kind of add more features to them. For example, containers that have ordering and filtering and hierarchy if you want to use those, but those are totally optional. And there are tons of different implementations. So all the most typical data sources are implemented. You can use them directly, or you can implement your own data source, and it's just about implementing those interfaces. One example, SQL container, if you want to connect a component to a database. Let's take any kind of component like table, and then we do a query on the database, select something from something over JDBC, and combine that with SQL container to the table. So the code for this would be just like this. This is the whole code. So we have some kind of connection pool, and then we are creating SQL container here and putting that on the table. Or we could, if you want also to write something back to the database, we can use table query. Actually, I think we have a bit of time. We can add that to our application. Maybe. So in order to do that, what do we need? We have our container here. We could, instead of this, we could, in our application, just build a SQL container. SQL container. SQL container, for that what we need a delegate, table delegate, table query delegate, for that we need a table. I happen to have a MySQL database here, and there is a documents table inside, and then we have a connection tool. Now I'm going to cheat because I don't remember all the passwords and such. Let's cut and paste that connection tool. somewhere else than in your main application. So we get the connection pool like this. Or maybe there is happens someone simple exception we want to handle that also. So a couple of lines of changes here. Actually, we want to connect that back to the selector. Set container data source. Like this. I don't know if this works or not. Let's see. Oh, JDBC driver would be nice. Copy of MySQL driver and like application. Like this. I think we have to now restart the server. This is the first time restarting the server. And then we have a bunch of documents from the database. Actual contents are on the different database column, but we will actually quite easily put it here. But I think you can believe that kind of switching from data source to another is quite simple task to do. And this kind of data source has a lot of kind of details for you automatically, like lazy loading and sorting and transactions and support different databases. But this is not the point here. It was just an example of a database. I think most of the person will be using JPA container rather than SQL container. So the second idea behind Vaadin is combining power of Google Web Toolkit and server-side real. So this is a hybrid solution in a way. If you think of the web application, it has different layers. All of them have the backend layer. At least if you have kind of database, probably some kind of business component here. Then you have some kind of front-end server, your web server that serves things back to the web. You have a browser here, and the browser somehow connects to the front-end server through remote processing calls. And if you think of different technologies, this browser part is created in JavaScript, RPC, in some kind of JSON over the wire or something like that. The front-end and the back-end server can be written in any language and technology you prefer, whether that's Java or Ruby or what have you. And if you think of the Google Web Toolkit, it actually nicely adds one more layer here. Second browser layer that is written in Java and compiled to JavaScript. So you would have like 5 different abstraction layers. Vaadin works in such a way that you have the right front-end server part and the back-end server part. Nothing else. So 2 parts. The UI part that we're writing is clearly the front-end server part, and the back-end server part didn't do any proper back-end server. We should have isolated all the database connections to the back-end server part. But we can also optionally write any of these parts. If we want to fine-tune the details, we could add these parts here. We could write things on the browser side of Vaadin, and that's the power of it. If you're comparing this to Google Web Toolkit, in Google Web Toolkit you always have to write all these 4 parts, and only one is optional. So always have to write the backend server and the frontend server. Basically this one implements the web APIs that you are exposing to web. RPC calls, there is tons of helpers in Google Web Toolkit to simplify this part, but still you have to think about it and write it. And the browser side is of course having all the user interfaces. So you have 4 layers to implement instead of 2. And this is probably the most kind of compelling reason to use server-side real most of the time. You could use like this 99% of the time, and if you really, really want to go to the client side and do some fancy canvas animation here, you are free to do so, or add some kind of support for geolocation in browser native APIs, or packaging that to I don't know, mobile application. All kind of things are possible, but you only up and require using these two parts. If you compare this to EGJS, that is, I think, the best JavaScript library for building vision applications at the moment, there are also 4 parts required, and you cannot use Java browser pad at all. So how does it actually work behind the scenes? So what happened when we built that application? Let's build another one. This is a really simple one. One text field, one button, and one listener for the button. This gets called when the button is clicked. It shows a notification on screen and shows what we have written here in the text field. Like really simple application. So we start at Firefox, and when we point our Firefox in the correct URL, what happens? It loads a web page. It loads HTML, CSS, images, JavaScript from Vaadin. These are all generated by Vaadin, so you don't have to do any of those. And you get a staggering amount of stuff back. Our hello world is 800K lines. Doesn't sound good, right? The good side here is that you always should be deploying with the compression enabling the server. So this goes down to maybe 250K. And if you really want to optimize it, you could use an optimized widget set that only contains the widgets that you are really using. And you can go to maybe 150K in your application, including all the widgets. And one thing that you should be noting here is that this is everything that you load from your application. Even if your application would have like million code lines, it would still be this 250K that is loaded to the browser side, because all of those million lines are sitting on the server side. These are just implementations on those components, how to render a tree, how to render a button on the web page. So you get a UI. It's not much, but you can still write your name here and then go and click this button, and then Vaadin automatically sends an AJAX call to the backend. And this is just one AJAX call. This changing this text field here didn't do any AJAX call. Just when I clicked to the button, it sent AJAX call. Because this was not needed and this was needed. Okay, what is in the AJAX call? It basically says that, hey, the user submitted or put a text Joonas in the text field name and clicked the button. And this is a queue. If I would have done like 10 different things, they would be here in order in a queue. This gets sent to the server side in your application. This is 150 bytes, so it's really, really efficient. On the server side, we had this method that handled it, so it basically shows a notification. And this is only thing that you are using. What happens here is that after you are executing this, Framework kind of finds out that, hey, you are changing something on the UI layer and automatically sends back a message to the browser side. So it actually uses the same AJAX call, so there is just one AJAX call going back and forth. And here it says add a notification on screen. And this part is 466 bytes. So it basically really, really efficient call back and forth. And it modifies UI by showing this notification here on screen. And this is how Vaadin works. All the UIs are constructed in this kind of way. All the interactions go like this. Behind the scenes, there are actually 2 parts for each UI component. So if you think of this text field component, it had 2 parts. First part, this green one here, is the server-side part. It's the kind of normal plain old Java object. And these were the ones that we are using in order to build our application user interface. And this blue part here is a browser-side part. It's kind of handles all the rendering and all the event handling for this guy here. And these are inside the framework, so you don't have to worry about this. This part is normal Java running on a normal JVM on the server side, and this one is also Java, but it's compiled to Google Web Services. So it's like Java from end to end. And this has a really, really nice implication. It's really easy to add more of these parts here, but I go back to that in a while. I think it's worthwhile to note that you are mostly using these guys on the server side but you have the option to break through the abstraction and add these guys also. So it's pretty easy to add those components. And it goes like this. You create a component with Eclipse Wizard. We put a name here, my fancy widget, a little fancy widget. It creates two classes for you, one for each of those parts. Basically, then you just have to add the rendering code here, what you're actually doing on the DOM. Or you could extend any existing Google WebKit component. Collect events, what the user does with the user interface, and send them to the green guy here. The green guy here passes those events back to the application code that is listening to those events. And the nice thing is that then you can package these two guys after you have written them in a small package. You just fire up packaging wizard, and it compresses or packages both sides, both the client side and the server side, and the communication, everything in one package, just a jar file. And then you can go online on Vaadin.com and upload that jar file. If you want to kind of distribute that to the rest of the guys in the community, and choose, hey, this is a UI component here, and then click upload button, and it goes to Vaadin directory. It's a kind of repository of hundreds of those components. I think at the moment the count is around 240. And each of these add-on components might be a component library. So you were asking about charting components. There are lots of charting libraries inside here. And then anybody who doesn't find the component that they need from the core component set in Vaadin could go to directory and see if there are ready-made component for him, if not, create one of their own. Let's take an example. This is, I think, a really good example of why we should not put all the components in the core. It's a component called paper stack. We just selected that from the directory and then go to the paper stack page, and there we can see a screenshot of paper stack. We could see a source code example of paper stack, and then we can either download it or cut and paste the Maven definitions to our project. Who's using Maven, by the way? Not too many. So, because not too many are not using Maven, we decided to download it. We are dropping that directly to the library in our project, library directory in our project. And Eclipse detects that, hey, we dropped an add-on component in there, and it asks, hey, should I integrate this component with our application? What this does, it automatically adds these widgets to the widget set that you are using. So there is a standard Vaadin widget that comes with the product, and this automatically compiles this to be part of the widget set so that you can use it. So we say yes, and write a simple application. So this is a paper stack application. I don't go through it line by line. Just create initialize the layout somehow. Those are the same guys that we are using for that previous demo. So we just put some layouts and labels inside the paper stack component that we just started to use. Basically create 4 different nodes. All the code is here, and the results look like this. So we get a paper stack that looks like a post-it note. And the nice thing here is that you can kind of play with it. And this can contain any Vaadin component. And as you can see, this is a totally useless component. Who would use this kind of component in business application? But it's still quite cool. And if you would put this in the core framework, it would bloat the framework. But now, when you are in desperate need of paper stack component, you can go to directory and download it from there. Another note from here is that those animations for the shadows and kind of clipping of the components, even though it looks simple, it's actually really, really hard to do. It uses a lot of math for kind of calculating the shapes for those shadows. Duplicates DOM like 16 times in order to clip those components properly and show these at the same time. And the good side is that if you're using this component in your code, you don't have to know anything about this. It's somebody who wrote the component, did all the HTML5 magic inside there, and you can just use it. Or if you happen to be the HTML5 guy in your team, you can kind of build your own components and send to the rest of the team, and they don't have to kind of go and do a little modifications to your code base and break things up. Third and final thing is embracing Java. So Vaadin tries to be as good Java citizen as possible. That means that you can use any JVM language for coding. For example, Scala. Scala started to be more and more popular. There is a small Vaadin layout coded in Scala, and with a powerful language like Scala, you could maybe save half of the code lines and cooperate with Java. So if you are saving half of the code lines with Vaadin and then half of the code lines with Scala, it starts to be like really, really tiny. But you can use any other ones also. These are the supported browsers. So we support basically all the major browsers, unfortunately even the old ones, so like really, really old browsers are supported. And it's important to know that we are not using any client-side Java, we are not recovering any plugins, and there is nothing to install to get into the computer, so this kind of simplifies the application distribution quite a lot. You can use any server container or any portal or most of the cloud platforms for running Vaadin. These are some of the products that we test with. I will go through the list. But basically, everything that supports servlet spec 2.3, that's like ancient servlet spec, can run Vaadin or either of the portal specs. Actually, one portal library comes built into Vaadin, and all the development tools in the library support Vaadin out of the box. Oh, is anyone using library, by the way? Quite a few. Because this is just plain Java, most of the Java tooling works out of the box. You already saw the Eclipse plugin. There is a similar plugin for IDEA and a simpler plugin for NetBeans. But with NetBeans, you could, even though there is no visual editing for Vaadin components in NetBeans, it works really nicely together with Maven, and Vaadin is really good support for Maven. This is a screenshot of the IDEA plugin, so it actually has all the same features as the Eclipse plugin. I haven't been using it myself yet too much. It was released 3 days ago, so it's quite young. Maven plugin, or not plugin, but there are all the Vaadin components are in Maven main repositories. All the directory components are in a Maven repository, so you could just create a new Vaadin application with one archetype, basically writing this line to your console, and then just Maven package, and you would have a new Vaadin project already compiled package. And then you can start adding new add-on components just by cutting and pasting those snippets from the directory project. Is anyone using Spring Rule? A couple of guys. This is actually quite a fun tool. It's a kind of hard to describe it. It's a kind of helper application that sits side by side with you and sees how you are coding and kind of doing little things for you automatically. So if you are creating a new class, it kind of sees what annotations you are putting in there, and if you are putting proper annotations, it automatically starts to persist it or create a database for you. But maybe it's better to describe by example. So let's create a new rule, Spring Rule application. This is just a normal Maven project, by the way. And there is 2 modes with it. First is like letting it inspect what code you are writing and kind of creating new things for you automatically. Or you can discuss it through directly as a kind of command line interface. And you could ask, hey Roo, please, could you create me a database? And Roo goes and creates a database, and adds a hibernate layer on top of it. And then you have persistence layer automatically created in one command. And then you can start ask, hey, could you create me an entity in the database, in my data layer? So this is a pizza topping entity or pizza entity, and you could add fields to those entities. So you could create those entities in your application interactively, put the validators in there, put constraints, whatever you want in your entities and fields. And it automatically creates a bunch of classes. So it's a bit scary. It created a bunch of files for you, pizza Java class, and then a bunch of aspect chain files that add more functionality to those entities. But it's actually really, really handy because you don't have to write any of these guys. They were automatic. The classes itself are quite clean. So this is just a normal entity class with a couple of annotations that automatically inject new stuff into your entity. You could also ask it to create Vaadin user interfaces automatically. You just ask Vaadin setup, it creates a Vaadin base application for you, and then you could say Vaadin generate call, and it generates CRUD type of user interfaces for all of your data layer. So you have more files, a bit more scary. Normally I just hide those aspect chain files and it looks decent. This is the end result from these commands. So I didn't write any lines of code, I just asked a couple of commands through, and it generated database, it generated entity layer for me, it generated this UI, and I can start editing these pictures with the UI. It's a bit rough here and there, you have like database IDs on the screen, and because I didn't specify how to show them. One thing here is that even though the forms look a bit kind of boring, you could open these up in the visual editor and start editing these. So you could kind of use a better layout here, and you could go back and forth with the code and layout editing. You could add more fields to the data layer, and these pop up here in the visual editor. And you could end up with a decent looking application without almost no code. This is not good for everything, but it might be a nice starting point for administration UI or something like that. So getting started with Vaadin. First of all, go to vaadin.com and you can download Vaadin from there. So it's fully free, Apache licensed. Just go and grab it. If you want to compare it with some of the other frameworks you are using more familiar with, there is a comparison matrix where you can choose between different frameworks and see different comparison points between the frameworks. You can actually use this even without having Vaadin over here. So you can compare like GRT and Picket to each other. One of the best things in Vaadin is documentation. It's really well documented. There is a whole book about Vaadin, and it's free. This is almost 700-page book available at vaadin.com. You can download as PDF or for ebook reader or as HTML, or actually if you want to have it as hard copy, you can also go to lulu.com and order a hard copy. Yes. There are also some other books around, but these are commercial. This is one of the best resources I like about Vaadin. I don't know how many of you are using these, or they have this kind of free reference cards where you can learn a technology, any kind of technology, really fast in 5 to 6 pages. I have a pile of these here, so if anybody wants to have a copy, there are hard copies, but you can also go online and download it for free. It has useful things like this kind of components are basically listing all the major components in Vaadin and how they relate to each other. So you can have a one glimpse and know how what is out there in the framework.
Okay, I was using Google Web Toolkit from about 3 years ago. Okay, problems I found in Google Toolkit. I hope it's not in the video. Okay, like modules. If I press refresh, you come to the first page. Okay, is this available in Vaadin modules?
Yeah, you mean like bookmarking inside application and configuration? Yes. Actually, if you go back to this demo here, so for example here, each of these stages are changing the URI fragment area.
Okay.
And we can link to these directly.
This is like Google application. This is Google application.
This is Vaadin application, but because this is built on top of Google Web Toolkit, you can also handle those URI fragments in Google Web Toolkit.
Okay. A second thing, about integration. Is it available to integrate with any framework in Java like Spring?
Could you repeat the question?
It's Spring. If I wanted to integrate, it wasn't very available in Google Toolkit when I used it. Now, is it available in Vaadin too?
I'm sorry.
Integration with other.
Yes, sure. So, because these are Vaadin components are just plain Java objects, anything that is available for Java is available for Vaadin. Yes. Exactly. And there are tons of tutorials online for like using Spring security together or injection in Spring together with Vaadin.
Okay. One last question. When I was using Google Toolkit, I used to combine the project so every Java class is converted to be JavaScript. Is this the same in Vaadin? I mean, it was taking a lot of time for me when I was doing.
You mean like compiling?
Yeah, from Java to JavaScript, it's a conversation.
Yeah, Vaadin avoids that problem because, as you saw, just anything code it automatically, immediately showed on web browser. So there is no compilation time for. Only place when you have to recompile something from Java to JavaScript is when you start to use a new component, and that's a one-time operation. So if you add this, what I had, papers and component in the application, it compiles once. It might take a minute or two, but after that, the rest of the development cycle up.
Okay, so if the project was large, I mean like 500 Java file, how long would it take to convert it from Java to JavaScript?
In Vaadin, you don't have to convert anything to Java to Java. So you can have like... Oh, deployment. Yes. Yeah, this is, so you could just package it. There is no compilation step. So export a WAR file. I want to put this to my desktop. WAR, finish, done. So there is no compilation step in there. It's just plain Java. That's the kind of beauty of it. Yes.
Kind of similar questions about the GWT. One thing bothering me about the GWT when I'm using RPC stuff, I want to take control about how the data sources specifically are communicating with the server. The thing I'm not seeing as a developer. I'm not really interested in how buttons are communicating with clicks and overs. I'm interested about the data sources. Do I get to get control of how is it communicating with the server, specifying the type of communication, for example, to be RESTful?
No. But, so, Vaadin handles all the code communication part automatically. If you want to take control over the communication part, it would mean that you are really programming on the client side and doing those RPC calls yourself. You can do it, you can combine any Google Web Toolkit components with Vaadin and do some parsing by yourself. But then Vaadin doesn't help you. So you're using the normal Google Web Toolkit.
So I'm creating my own data sources. I'm using this Vaadin protocol. That's where I do have to create my own data source.
Yes. So if you're building a new component and you create those two classes,
I'm creating a new data source rather than a component. No, sorry, I got the component and the UI meaning of it. Yeah, data source component, yes.
So if you are creating a new data source component, it's communicating with the server-side UI component, not the client-side directly. And there you have control over how lazily it loads data from the database. So, for example, in this case here, if I would have like a million rows here, it would only load more rows from the database while the user actually shows those to the screen. So you can have control over that one.
So one last quick question. How is Vaadin doing on the mobile platforms? And that example you were showing them, iOS, is that native iOS or was that a browser?
That was the browser. It also works on Android, and we are hoping to add Windows.
Android, does it have a browser also, or that native?
Not native, but Android has a look and feel is also allowed to add.
Android, it's Android look and feel, but it's a browser. Okay.
I can show you. It's easy to explain that way. So I could actually run the same application right here. And this is just Chrome. So it's just web.
I have a question about customizing the client-side code I need to inject in my application. So when I develop an application in these days, I'm concerned about some sort of logic to be executed in the client side, in the browser. I don't need to call the server to fetch some data or even fetch the logic itself. So does Vaadin provide me to inject some client-side logic or access the components in client-side in the browser?
Yes and no. So all the components in Vaadin are built with Google Web Tools. So you could extend those and use Java on the client side to kind of add any kind of logic you want there. Or there are also some simple decorative ways of adding client-side logic. Okay, I don't have demo here, but where you could kind of add simple hide list thing, that kind of stuff, completely on the client side. Of course, because from Google Web Tools you can call native JavaScript, you could also integrate JavaScript logic in there. But in all those cases, you are on your own in a way. It's possible to do, but it's not something that Vaadin creates automatically for you.
Okay. Another question: do the components of Vaadin support custom data source? I need to fetch some data from a CMS system, and I need to be rendered in the component.
Yes, sure. So those data source APIs I saw are actually just, these ones are just interfaces. You just implement those interfaces and you can have anything behind those interfaces and show them on the components. So these are something that are ready-made.
Yes, they are already ready. I need to customize, build my own data source type or interface to interface with my built-in CMS system. Not open source, those things.
Yeah, you have two different options. Either you create your own data source by implementing these interfaces, or other option is that you just copy data from your data source into UI component. That's also totally fine if you don't have like millions of rows there. I think there are, but I'm not totally sure if there is. Because you have all the Java tooling around, it's quite easy to do, but I'm not sure if there are ready-made. normally goes through the server, so that your UI front-end server is connected to the third-party server, not the browser directly. But yes, it is totally easy to do.
I'd like to ask a couple of questions regarding OSGI. So the first one is regarding the state. Like for each user is a new instance of the application class created, yes. And the same thing for the rest of the components. Like for each user, there should be, for the full track. So
yes. So there was a copy of that text field in that user session. That's what we asked, yes.
Okay, and the other thing is related to adding additional widgets. This requires, I suppose, compiling these and bundling them with the application. So in case of OSGI, you would want to have these being bundled separately. Is that possible?
Good question. If they are just kind of server-side components like data sources, then it's totally possible.
No, I'm talking about widgets.
Of the widgets.
Like have the widget be compiled into
yes.
JavaScript and then bundled separately. Is there a way to do that?
There is a limitation for Google Web Toolkit that it has to have sources for all the UI components at the same time to produce one set of JavaScript files. So if you would bundle all the UI components as separate OSGI bundles, then you would have to have some kind of service that would, when you update what bundles are available, would recreate the theme. It's just a compilation step, but I think you have to have it in there.
Okay, so in other words, I'd have to create a project dedicated for the widgets and add all the additional widgets that I need and then compile and bundle that.
I think so. For example, in library, Vaadin application can be run as portals. And if you have a portal with tons of different Vaadin applications, at least the ones on the same web page must be using the same set of widgets. And in order to coordinate this, we have a kind of control panel where you can just say that, hey, I want to combine this and this and these components, and it compiles them in one widget.
Okay, can we discuss this offline?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Are we out of time, or do you have to? Okay. Oh, you mean like this? So if anyone wants to have a copy of these, I have a bunch of these here. But if you have any more questions, I'll be around and we can discuss it offline. Thanks.